Hi, this is Miss Litton, and this is my wonderful period 1 class. Say hi.
Hi.
All right. And so we're continuing on chapter 44, population ecology, starting off at section 44.3, population growth models. So as we look at the different population growth models, it's always going to revolve around an organism's fitness. What is an organism's fitness? Yeah. So then, are you a once and done? Are you like, this is it for me? Stop pointing to Jeremy. Are you like, I'm just surviving long enough to get to this one time where I'm going to reproduce, and then that's it, I'm done. And if you're going to reproduce one time, do you think you're going to only make one offspring? No, you better make a bunch. And if you're going to make a bunch, you're probably very, very small. Probably a smaller organism. When they do the once and done, they're living up to this one major reproductive event, and then they're going to die. They're semilparous. You know how I remember that? Semil single. One single reproductive event. Whereas if you're iteroparous, these are times where you're going to mature, and then you're going to reproduce, and then you will reproduce again at a later time, and then you will reproduce again at a later time. So these are two different strategies. Why two different strategies? Who's selecting for these two different strategies? Natural selection, right? So it must be advantageous, right, to go one way or the other. So on semilparity, members of a population have only a single reproductive event in their lifetime. Only a single reproductive event in their lifetime. Mature adults will cease growth and focus on reproductive event, and then what? Die. Blue, tell them about the adaptation. Go ahead, Blue. Okay, as opposed to iteroparity, where members of a population experience many reproductive events. Come back to me, please. Many reproductive events throughout their lifetime. Mature adults continue to invest in their future survival, which increases their chances of reproducing again. Invest in their future survival, which increases their chances of reproducing again. And this is an adaptation for what kind of environment? A stable environment. Most vertebrates, shrubs, trees, obviously, like birds and mammals. Okay, so these lead us to our two different growth models, exponential and logistical. What do you hear in exponential? Okay, what do you hear in logistical? Logic, right? Okay, so on exponential growth models, if you look here, okay, you're starting out, if you look, first of all, read your axes. Got it? So you're starting out with maybe 10 organisms. Then you're to what? 20. And then you're to
40.
20 times 2 is 40. And then you're to 80. Exactly. And so you're going to have this exponential growth. And literally any species could do that as long as they have unlimited resources. You could grow exponentially. But the problem is, at some point, you're probably going to what?
Die.
Oh, okay. Run out, that too. Run out of what? Resources. These types of, when you live on the exponential model, a lot of times it's boom or bust. They're growing, and then they what? Crash. These are like the Romans. Eat and drink because tomorrow we may die, right? You're not looking for the long game. You're in it right now. So growth accelerates over time, and this is known as a J-shaped growth curve. Can you see the J? I see the J. All right? And for it to continue unchecked, you have to have unlimited resources. This organism that they've used to represent this is a very what? Small organism. Okay? Slate, tell them what you see, because we're going to compare this to something else later. So take a look. What do you see here in this exponential growth? So what are you seeing? Constant increase, right? Doubling, right? Okay, so on your notes, go to exponential growth. Usually simultaneous reproduction, but can occur with as long as you have abundant resources. J-shaped growth curve, exponential growth, there are no limitations. And on that graph, you had a lag stage and you had an exponential stage, but it will eventually crash. All right, let's do a little itty bitty math, okay? Concrete. Okay, so take a look at these, and those of you who have already looked at your equations, right, then you're familiar with that. But that triangle always represents, delta, and it's always representing what? Change. N is always in these equations, represents the population size, and then T is time. So when you're trying to look, this would be saying what? A change in the population over time, a change in time. So that's going to be births minus deaths. That's like an absolute number. If in a particular population you have 40 births and 20 deaths, then what was your change in population? 20. That's a hard number, right? Okay, but when you want to make comparisons for several different populations, they all have different population sizes. So 20 might be a lot for one population, but maybe not so much for another population. So you want to do it per capita. I wonder why they can't fix that. It's happened, right? Okay, I don't know what, okay. It happens when you look at it per capita, which is what are the actual number of births per 1,000, okay, and the number of deaths per 1,000. So if you had 1,000 people and 1,000 births, that would be 1,000 over 1,000. That would be 1. Okay. If you had 500 deaths for 1,000 people, man, that's severe. Okay. What's 500 divided by 1,000? Half. So that would be a then death rate of what? 0.5. So if you had a birth rate of 1 per capita and a death rate of 0.5, then your change would have been 0.5, right? Okay, that right there gives you your intrinsic rate of increase. That's your R. You take your birth rate minus your death rate. Now remember when we talked about biotic potential? Remember how many kids did I have? 2. Could I have had more? Yes, but I was reaching my carrying capacity as a family, right? I couldn't have more because there were some sort of resources that were limiting me, right? The size of my vehicle, right? The size of my bank account, okay? Right? All of those things, the size of my emotional heart, okay? Especially with all of you feeling it. So, you're like, whatever. Then don't give us a final if you really love us. I know what you're thinking. So, when you look at biotic potential, we talk about when do you start reproducing, how often do you reproduce, what are the chances of survival. That's your R. So if you want to find your change, you're taking the birth rate minus the death rate, that is R. And then if you want to calculate the change in your population, over time, okay, you will take what is that intrinsic rate of increase times it by your specific population. Because this R is usually per capita, per 1,000. You may not have 1,000 in your population. Maybe you have 75 in your population. Okay? But you're giving that number as per 1,000. So you take that R, you multiply it by N, that's going to be your change in population over time. Are you changing by 30? Are you plus 30? Could you ever have a negative R? Yeah. How would you have a negative R? Higher death rate than birth rate. What would cause you to have a higher death rate than birth rate? What are something that could influence your population? Environmental factors. Okay, disease. Okay, let's hit both of these. Okay, you say disease. Is disease an abiotic or a biotic factor? Biotic because it's what? A lot. Now you're saying environmental, what in your environment? Like a flood?
Yes.
Okay, if it was a flood, or what did you say?
Or another natural disaster.
Okay, if it's a natural disaster or a flood, is that abiotic or biotic? Abiotic. So those type of factors, right, could give you a higher death rate than birth rate. And if so, I would predict that your population would go down. Yes?
The capita could be changed if it was studying with ants, you could make the capita 1,000,000, right? Or is it only universally?
Oh, that you're just kind of saying, when they say per capita, they're usually talking about per per 1,000. But they don't always give it to you. Yeah, well, that's the whole reason why you would take that number and multiply it by your population size for your particular population. That's why you have N. Okay? That's why you would have N. Because you would take that intrinsic rate of increase or decrease, whatever it is, and times it by your population size. Now, what could slow down that number if I'm reaching, like you've already done your homework, if I'm reaching my carrying capacity, could slow it down, right? Because at first, when I had one kid, it was almost like I was doing exponential growth, right? Because I went from one kid to what? 2 kids, and then it slowed down, reached my carrying capacity. So I was exponential for a little bit, right? And that's true even about the logistic growth curves. You will be exponential. There'll be an exponential component, but then you're going to start to level off. So your book has like equations like this. So discrete breeding is like once and done. That would be semiparis, that's single time. Okay, but you take a look at this. The chart I showed you before, how is this chart different? Discuss with BioBuddy. How is this chart different than the one I showed you earlier? Pay attention over here. That's probably give you a good hint. So this is the kind of stuff they would give you on an AP exam. They won't have you define iteroparis or semiparis. They won't have you define that. They're just going to assume you know that, or they actually give you the definition, right? Annoyingly so. Okay? But they would give you some data and say, what's happening here? What's going on here? And what do you see happening here? At first, what's going on? What would you say? This region right here is still what? Exponential, right? And then what happens? Yeah, this doesn't mean their population's getting smaller. What does this mean? Yeah, there's fewer added to their population. The closer you get to the carrying capacity, your increase every year starts to slow down because you're at your limit. All the homes are taken. There are no more vacancies. So in that next year, that reproductive event, maybe 5 years earlier when that space was first colonized, every offspring could find a home. But now there's fewer and fewer and fewer availabilities, so it starts to put the brakes on that growth. So it's not that they're still aren't growing, because you can see they're growing, right? 3, 5, 594, 6, still growing, but at a slower rate. Okay, so now we're getting into the logistic growth curve. Okay, notice we still have a lag phase and we still have a exponential, but we have this deacceleration time as we get towards our carrying capacity. So I already showed you that. I'm done with that. Okay, so on this one we have limiting factors. For instance, here you could have some sort of environmental resistance. It could be loss of habitat. So the polar bear numbers, now it could change because maybe global warming, less space, fewer glaciers or whatever, right? I think the government still, no, I'm wrong, it stopped, no more global warming. But this habitat loss, I used to watch first period, reminded me what it was like. It was like when cops would go to Alaska, patrol. Alaska State Troopers. Yeah, and then the cops would actually fly into these villages, and take care of whatever the problem was. Usually, it's somebody who's been drunk for 3 days, and they need to take care of. But I remember they would be talking, right? And they'd be like, "Oh, the polar, kids need to be careful because they're going to walk. There's like 10 houses in this whole town. I don't know what they do." And they're going to walk to school. Watch out, the polar bears in town today. Okay. Put on extra earmuffs. I don't know what you say there, but the polar bears people they're encroaching on our land. No, what happened first? We encroached first, right? So that creates competition between the two different species. That's our next chapter, right? We're talking about population. Now we're gonna level up in our next chapter and talk about communities and you're going to look at competition between two different species. But you could suffer something like this, habitat loss. Okay, and this is, again, logistic growth. Person in the, whose turn is it? Slate, go. Explain that. Should be easy. There's words on the bottom. Go, Slate.
Continuous breeding is like investment energy in the young. They keep doing it over and over again. Yeah, the other one just like mass producing. Whereas
Okay, so this is not going to be their only, what do they call them, joeys? Yeah, it's not going to be their only joey. So they're going to invest in this joey, and then they'll invest in another joey, right? So they're heteroparous. So they're going to have multiple reproductive events. Okay? Take a look at this picture on your logistic growth model. And I would like now blue, compare and contrast the logistic growth that is in blue to the, the exponential growth, which is in blue, to the logistic growth that is in tan. Okay, so blue seated person. Compare and contrast the two graphs. How are they the same? How are they different?
Isn't exponential growth like produces one time and moves on their line? So wouldn't that be
Okay, so here's your carrying capacity, and sometimes it's going a little above, sometimes a little below. What kind of feedback does that look like? You're so smart. Okay, so go to logistic growth. Limiting factors influence the exponential growth, which they still have. Slowing down, leveling off, S-shaped growth curve as opposed to J. Population levels out because it is limited by environmental resistance. Slate, do all of B, you have it.
It is slate.
Slate. And then write down your definition for carrying capacity. Write down your definition for carrying capacity.
Okay, so we have phases, which is like log exponential deceleration and stable equilibrium, and then the carrying capacity, what is it?
It's right here. Are you putting it in your notes?
Maximum number of individuals and species that can be supported by the environment. So like all the sugars at the bottom.
Easy peasy, right? No problem. Okay, so Blue, this will be you. I actually got this from a hunting website. Okay, but go ahead, Blue, discuss.
More resources leads to higher.
So what's happening to the carrying capacity here? Is it changing? Yeah, depending on the amount of resources they have, right? Now, could fluctuations in carrying capacity affect the migration patterns?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course it could. Yes, and that's how they're responding to their environment. You don't want to stay in this environment because the carrying capacity is too low now, so I need to migrate to an area where I have a higher carrying capacity. Okay, what would select natural selection, right? For those organisms that moved where they could have larger numbers, which would increase their overall, starts with an F? Fitness. There you go.
Evolution, baby.
Evolution, baby. All right, so we're going to change our equation a little bit, and there's an explanation in your book on this, but I'm going to do mine right here. So do you see how it has this D right here? I probably should put that in italics because calculus, right, differential, right? Are you with me?
I'm waiting. Take notes. I think this is differential. Shut up.
You're right there. You're right there. Okay, so this is this change in the population over this given moment. The next year it could be something else, right? Next year it could be something else. Because that how rapid, how much it changes, either increase or decrease, is going to be influenced now by the carrying capacity. And my side note, my 1/8 note.
Get it? No.
Yes.
I do get it, that's why I picked it. Okay? So think about this. If our population carrying capacity, let's say, is 400, and the population size is at 20, okay? New Island, they got dumped there, whatever. So 400 minus 20 currently is how much?
380.
380 divided by 400. What is that? Use a calculator. 380 divided by 400.
95.
Not 95. 0.95. So think about that. So we're going to take its intrinsic rate of increase, whatever that is, and you would calculate R by taking the birth rate minus the death rate. That would give you R. Then you would have, the N is the population size currently, which I told you was what for this population?
400.
No, I told you it was at 20, right? So you would take whatever I didn't give you the R, okay? You would take R times N times, which would be 20, times, what did you say? 380. So that, or sorry, 0.95. 0.95 is very, very close to 1. It's because our population size is so far away from the carrying capacity, the carrying capacity is not a big deal at this point. But if instead our population, what's our carrying capacity? 400. If we're at 350 right now, what's 350? If you take the carrying capacity, take that away from 400, you're at 50 divided by 400 is what?
180.
No, it's not going to be 180. Think about it. Point what? Point what? 0.25? Okay, no.
180.
0.18. There you go. Now, that's going to affect how fast our population grows, right? Before we were taking R times N times 0.95, right? So it's almost like we're multiplying it by 1. So the carrying capacity doesn't have a big factor. But if we're taking R times N times 0.18, right, you're not going to have as large of a growth. Now, if I'm not even worried about the carrying capacity at all, okay, I'm just taking R times N. That is, what's my birth rate minus my death rate times my population size. That would just be my change. But if I am in a logistic growth curve, if I am looking down, if I'm a larger animal, I'm always going to be concerned about the carrying capacity. So how close I am to the carrying capacity is going to influence this calculation right here. If I'm far away from it, it's almost going to be multiplying it by 1. If I'm very close to my carrying capacity, I'm not going to have as much growth. And that's why you see back here, when we were looking here, the amount that the population changed was less and less and less because they were reaching the carrying capacity. Yes?
So you said that as they approach the carrying capacity, the growth will probably
Decrease. It'll keep decreasing.
That's not a conscious thing just because of natural selection. Can organisms consciously reproduce less?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Because do they have the ability to recognize when they're reaching their carrying capacity?
I don't know.
Well, that would be, is there more competition? So are there fewer that are available to reproduce as the competition increases? Those we're going to talk about. What are some of the factors that influence that population and how do they respond to that? For instance, let me give you an example. Naked mole rats. Oh, they're blind. Blind naked mole rats. Okay? What happens is they have a common urinal and they live underground. Common urinal. Okay? And what happens is the queen, she goes and she urinates in there with everybody else. She's the only one who can reproduce, is the queen. And everybody else, when they urinate, following urination, because they're blind, they rub themselves with fluid out of the common urinal. And that way they all know, because they're blind, hey, we're all in the same group because we all smell like the same pee. Could you see how that's adaptive?
I would
Right? Because then you know friend from foe, right? Okay, don't get worried about the urine. Just go with the concept, okay? Now, it turns out the queen's urine, she puts a chemical in there that interferes so that the other females can't ovulate. Yeah. Okay. So she's inhibiting, she's like putting birth control pills in that urine. Okay. And it's interfering with the other female's ability to ovulate. That means she controls all the reproductive events. When the queen dies and she's no longer urinating in there, there's nothing to inhibit the ovulation, right? And whichever queen starts ovulating and reproduces, the next female, as soon as she takes over and starts urinating, then she inhibits everybody else. So that's a way to monitor population size by who can reproduce and who can't. Okay? So we'll look at different strategies like that.
Would that be like a conscious thing? Or like
No, it's just selected for. It's not like they're rubbing it and going, fine, I won't reproduce. They're just doing that, right? So is that behavior learned or is it innate, right?
And also, is it like known what the exact carrying capacity of the earth is for like humans? 8 billion.
Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to apply it to humans. Because the deal with humans is we have technology, right? So areas where we would be limited, where we couldn't go due to technology, we can go there. So we don't live within our carrying capacity. We overspend. And you think about Malthusian lifeboat ethics, right? My economist here. So people who are in, let's say, a third world nation, and there are wars and fighting and overpopulation, you could just say, survival of the fittest, they're just going to die. But what do? We go and send them what? Aid. Okay? We help them. So now more of them are living to just overpopulate our earth. We should just let them die. I'm not saying to do that, but see what I'm saying is as humans, we don't do that. We don't go, oh, there's the weak one. We are Sparta, throw them off the cliff, right? We don't do that. We save the weak babies. And so you can't apply really natural selection or these strategies because we have other issues that we supersede, our concern and care for others. So we're like, of course I want to help them out, right? So we can overstep because we have technology. At some point, could we reach a tipping point? Yeah, we run out of food and water, that's going to be a problem. And space, those kind of things. All right, so moving back to here. We just talked about carrying capacity. Do I owe you some notes on that or do you have it? You've got it. All right, so I annotated your equations for you here, just a little bit. So population growth, change in population over time, B minus D, this is like an absolute number, your births, your deaths. And then here, when we look at exponential growth, this could be dynamic, right? Where it's kind of an italicized, it will change the following year as the population changes. That number is going to keep changing. It's not a set number. And then here on logistic growth, when exponential growth is slowed down as it reaches the carrying capacity. So let's try this a little bit. I have a few questions for you. Maybe they will work. We had a little trouble with them last time. This is what I want you to be. Listen to me. I want you to be something in your life you're looking forward to that will happen within the next 2 months. Something close. Something close that you're looking forward to. What are you excited about? Reading a book whenever you want to read a book? Sleeping? What's something to look forward to? Netflix. Oh my gosh. Dying. Look, somebody's looking. No finals. You're so funny.
What am I naming? Who's that?
I'm looking forward to Jeremy Horse.
Is that you? I have no final.
Do a study abroad. That'll be fun. Coding at, is it Pixar? I only see Pixar. Who are you doing it?
Yeah.
Sweet. LA Times.
Is that you?
LA times what? What's LA times? You gonna tell me? Is that you, Max?
No, I'm not, no.
Who's doing LA times?
Max is no final.
No, but okay.
There's no one else.
Someone's LA turn.
They don't want to talk about it. Careful now. This first question might have more information than you need to answer the question.
How much time was there? For the time. It's like a little. So you just do 0.05 next year.
You got all of these.
Yeah, I have a limited on question 3. I have only so many characters, so I had to shorten it down. I want to know what's the population going to be the following year. Yeah, I said next year size. No, I ran out of characters I can use. So.
No, religion schools as a train plus 800.
But I can do like 6 in 1.
We close? Go. Some of you have answered nothing. Nothing. You ready? Let's go sleep. No, it's not.
Oh, I saw your post.
Let's go food. Let's go my birthday. No final. She said it.
She said no problem.
It's done. It's recorded. I forgot to pause. I'm sorry I forgot to pause. Hope you had fun listening to all that.
I'm better with that.
Okay, I'm done.
Me.
Ah. You know what the right answer is? Yeah, these. Minus 0.05. Okay. Why is it negative? Yeah. So you're saying your birth rate is 0.07, right? And your death rate is 0.12. So R equals the birth rate minus the death rate. So R equals 0.07 minus 0.12, and that's going to equal, right? So that's telling you that population is going to go down. Their intrinsic rate of increase is going to decrease. Now somebody put up there minus 30. What did they give me? They did not give me the growth rate. They gave me the change, right? It's going to change by 30 individuals, and they rightly said minus 30. Then whoever put 570 was telling me what the population was going to be the following year. So that's what I'm saying. You have to be careful when you read the question, what it's asking for, so you bubble in the right answer on your AP exam. Okay, tell your bio buddy, did you get that right, or did you struggle a little bit? Oh, and this person got it right too.
No, that's
-0.
Oh, you're right, they didn't get it right. Thank you, thank you. No, Miss Lynn. All right, and let's look at the next question. 12,000? Oh, stop. Oh, hey, I didn't know that's what it could do. 18 of you got that. 3 of you got that. Oh, I learned something new about this thing. Yeah, how many people said that? All right. So, okay, we're not questioning it. So, how did we get the 5 set? This, they just told the change, right? What did they do here? They increased it. But it can't because it is a negative rate, right? Their R was negative because their death rate was higher than their birth rate. All right? Check with your bio buddies. See if they're in the Shadowlands or Sunshine on that one. Ask them. Did you get it right? Are you giving them a little bell of shame or a gong of victory? Oh, okay. Let's talk about this. So we have a population of squirrels, and they have a carrying capacity. Why aren't you erasing? Okay. Wow. All right. Let me try this. All right. We'll just move you. Go away. So this is what I would suggest. When you get problems like this, write everything down, what everything is. So let's read our first thing. A population of squirrels has a carrying capacity of 800. So what could I write down? K equals 800. Okay? And a growth rate of 0.7. Okay, what is that equal to then? R. R equals 0.7. Okay, and their population is also currently at what? 600. What number is that? N. N equals 600. You okay so far? Now, if I'm involving the carrying capacity, then I must be saying what? I'm looking at the change is going to be equal to R times N times K minus N over what? K, right? So I'm looking at R. What is R going to be? 0.7 times N, which is what? 600. And then I need to figure this out. What is the carrying capacity? 800. So that's 800 minus how many? 600 over, 600 over what? Over the carrying capacity, which is 800. Do your math now. What is this number right here equal to? 800 minus 600 is 200. 200 divided by 800 is 0.25, right? Times 600 times 0.7. What does that equal? What? 105? Okay. So what's my population going to be next year? It's currently at, what's the population right now? 600. So next year, there's going to be a change of 105. What's 600 plus 105? 705. Right there, that number. 2 of you got it right.
It wasn't.
Yes. Now, talk about it with your bio buddy. If you weren't one of those 2, where did you step off the path? Find out right now. Go. Look at your map. Figure it out. Now, how could you have more experience with these problems? Yeah, and I'm going to tell you, like I said in the last time to you, the first part, it's like 3 pages of like explanation. I would read it. It's 3 pages, but it goes pretty quick, and it just says, this is why this is, this is why this is. Then they give you a series of 5 or 6 questions, which you could do. Then they give you the answers. I annotated the last set of answers, like the last question or so. That's that one. Then the second worksheet doesn't have any answers on it, but I gave you a link to all the answers and how they're done. It would be important for you to go through and do those. And that's why I don't have your quiz being on Tuesday, because I won't see you on Monday, right? And you know you're going to have one of these on your quiz, okay? So I won't see you on Monday, and I'm not anticipating that you're going to spend a lot of time on those worksheets before Friday. I'm betting you're going to want to do it over the weekend, okay? And I get that. I understand that. So, but the sooner you work on them, the better, okay? And then we can talk about them in 7th period. And so on your, do your practice problems, you will have an equation sheet just like you always do. But at this point, you probably would know them. You get to know them pretty quick, and I'm sure you won't even need the equation sheet. And in the past, there was no equation sheet. Students just had to know all of these equations by heart. Isn't that nice? Yes. All right. That takes us through there. All right. Before I move on to the next one, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 outstanding, tell your bio buddy, how do you feel about these equations and working with them? Tell your bio buddy, how do you feel about that? All right. So, I want you all to be perfect 10s, okay? How can you be perfect 10s? It's not going to happen by accident. It's going to be because you practiced. Do you think you could Google even more population? Yes, you can, okay? All right, so now let's talk about regulation of population size. What are some of the things that can regulate how big your population is? In natural environments, there's both biotic, like predation and disease, and abiotic, weather and water. Conditions play an important role in regulating population size. Play an important role in regulating population size. Dark-shirted bio buddy, this slide is all yours. Talk about it. You can do it without me. All right. So if you have a tornado coming about, is that dependent? Do tornadoes only go where populations are the most dense? No. They go where they go. Is that abiotic or biotic? Abiotic. So something like a tornado is a density independent factor, but can still it regulate a population size?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay? Flooding could do that. Drought could do that. Okay? Hurricanes could do that. But light-shirted bio buddy, man can do that because we can create things like dams, which then change the abiotic conditions for other organisms. We can pollute, put toxic chemicals in there, which changes the environment. But light-shirted one, explain why these dead rats make sense. Go ahead.
Okay, so density independent factors like strikes they impact small margins. So like it'll like is this all we have? Because there's that.
All right. So density independent factors, no correlation with population size. No correlation with population size. Are they biotic or abiotic?
Abiotic.
Abiotic. Though we can create some abiotic conditions, we're biotic, right? And we can create some bad abiotic conditions for them, but they're still abiotic. And then give some examples: flash floods, hurricanes, drought. So if you look at this, it's the same percentage of dead rodents, right? It doesn't matter if there's a large population or a small population, a density independent factor will wipe them out equally. As opposed to density dependent factors, okay? Look at them. Look at his butt. Look at his shoulders. Look at those biceps, right? If you're in that gorilla cage, like insta-death, right? Remember that poor little kid that was getting dragged around by the gorilla? Harambe. Okay. Now, so what's going on here? Look at him leaping. Okay? What's going on here? What could they possibly be competing over?
Women.
A woman. It always boils down to a woman. Okay? Maybe it's a woman. What else could it be?
Food.
Food, territory, right? So, masculinity. So, these are in my backyard. So what's going to happen is you're going to increase competition, things like competition, as you increase the population size. But you're going to increase population for like a territory, women, but also, dark shirted, go ahead. There's a line. See the line? There's a line in the middle. Okay, let's say everybody in here wanted to go to Stanford. Okay, when you graduate, you're like, I want to go to Stanford. Is there high or low competition for that? Okay. Now, if there is an epidemic plague, you're in a cohort, right? Survivorship curves, right? You're in a cohort. If there is a plague, and it happens to go run rampant through people who are in 10th grade for some reason, that age group, and 50% of our 10th grade population in the United States is removed. Think it'll be easier to get in Stanford? It will. Why? Competition went down. So is there going to be more room? Yes. Now now listen to me. Does that mean the best students are at Stanford?
No.
Not necessarily. They could be some surviving and going there that really don't deserve to be there and they can't handle the curriculum, but there's not a lot of competition. As competition increases, right, then the assumption is the best survival of the fittest. Those are the ones that are going to make it, right? Those are the ones that are going to go there. Now, I have to take this moment. Do you all need to go to Stanford? No, you don't. And you don't need to hold these colleges like Harvard. Nobody, no adults that I hang out with, do we talk about our GPAs? Okay, if we did, we would think you were a donkey, right? That's not interesting. You don't put your, you're not going to sit there and discuss that. Could you be proud of the university you go to? Absolutely. Okay? But what matters is that your heart is happy, right? You're going to come to that point. You don't have to make the most money. Right? But, right? Everybody loves different things. But what I'm saying is, don't let that stress. Everybody is going to get to go to college, all right? And you're going to find a job that I just saw an article pop up today where you don't have to get up early in the morning to even make the most money. I'm thinking, what? Okay. So, early in the morning, everybody has to get up early in the morning. But I don't want you to stress about that. It's not like you're less than if you go. I don't care where you go. I would like you to maximize your potential. I would like you to do what you want to do. It's a lie to tell you can be anything you want to be. Okay, that's not true. You can't. Right? Am I right?
You're right.
Yeah. We all have limitations. What you need to do is maximize the potential and the strengths that you're at. Right? I can't be a singer for a profession. It's not that I sing horribly. I actually sing okay. I think I sing okay. But I don't have, right? Altered. You know when they try out and they're singing horribly and they think they're singing great, and you're like, what's wrong with them? Where are their friends? Or like when I see somebody walk out with an outfit, I'm like, why did they let them go outside like that, right? But the thing is that we all have our strengths. Maximize your strengths, what you're good at, okay? So that you're not living under a shadow of constant disappointment your whole life. I want you to do what you're best at and find that, all right? So don't stress out about that college. You'll all get in. Now, maximize your potential, what you're good at. Okay? That's a mean. That's a mean. All right. Could predation influence population size? Yes. Is that a living thing? Yes. That's a biotic factor. Okay? And for instance, if, some prey numbers go up. Let's say there was a lot of rain one season, and so there's a lot of vegetation, so they have more to eat. The prey numbers are going to go up, but what else is going to come up? Predators. And as the predator numbers go up, what else is going to happen? Prey numbers are going to go down. And it's going to cause this cycling of events. So that will affect population size. Greater predation rate when the population size is larger. It's easier to find your prey. Disease and parasites. When you have crowding, you have an increased risk of getting that disease, and that could limit your population size. All of those factors that we talked about so far, those are all extrinsic of the organism. So let's write this one down. Density-dependent factors correlated with population size, and they are biotic. Number one, competition. When members of a species try to utilize a resource that is in limited supply. Now, I made a little thing after that, and I want a light-shirted bio buddy to take care of it. What do you think? We're going to talk about this later. What is resource partitioning? It comes up in the next chapter. Okay, resource partitioning, and look at the larva and the mature. Why would that be adaptive? Go ahead, light-shirted one. Why would that be adaptive?
So they don't want to eat like other things, and then don't
What are you trying to reduce? You're trying to reduce competition. So the larvae are not trying to eat the same food as the adult. Okay? For instance, for frogs, tadpoles are going to eat algae, right? Whereas the mature adult are going to eat claws. So they're not competing for the same resources. That's a good strategy, right? Okay, then predation, when the predator feeds on a prey. And parasitism usually weakens the host. And disease is more likely to spread with increased density. Okay, side note, on the other, density-dependent and independent factors are extrinsic of the organism. Extrinsic of the organism. It's imposed. Whether there's a drought, that's extrinsic of the organism. If there's a predator hunting you down, that is extrinsic. But there are intrinsic factors that can regulate population size as well. Some anatomy or behavior that is innate in your DNA, your physiology, that urine you put on yourself, right? Okay? Or there could just be wild fluctuations. You could just lose it altogether. All right? Just lose it. All right, I think, do I have? No, I don't. Not it. Tell him 2 new things you've learned. 2 new things you've learned. Pass or play, go. All right, so just helping you to differentiate, we're now going to transition, okay? We have learned about now population growth models. What were the 2 growth models we looked at? Logistic and exponential, all right? And we looked at what kind of things could regulate population growth. They could be density independent or density dependent. And we looked at some of those factors could be abiotic, some could be biotic. So now let's apply that to some organisms. Let's look at some life history patterns, how they behave, right? What things they have been selected for. What are they going for? Are they going for the R or are they going for the K? What do you think I mean by that? R is like you're trying to maximize your reproductive potential, right? And or are you going for the carrying capacity? So life history patterns, you have trade-offs guided by who? Natural selection. These are evolved strategies. And different organisms have taken different evolutionary pathways. So on your notes, life histories contain characteristics that can be thought of as trade-offs, all guided by natural selection and results in the evolution of species. Now I'm going to give you the two bookends. Okay, we call them R strategists and K strategists. These are the two bookends, but in reality, most are probably somewhere what? In between. Okay, in the middle. There you go. Now, on R selected, you could have these bugs. Let's just make some observations. Okay.
Every time, Miss Litton.
You just like to. So on R selected, talk to me about size.
They're
Small. Okay, do you think they're semiparous or iteroparous? Yeah, probably once and done, creating as many offspring as they can. Do you think they care for their offspring? Are they like, oh, look at my little baby cockroach, 1 of 1,000? Okay? No, they're probably not caring for their offspring. Do you think they have a short lifespan or a long lifespan? Okay? Okay, so applying these types of organisms, this strategy of being R selected, look up here, being R strategists, they're classified as being opportunistic, taking advantage of the current environment in that current time. They do tend to be small and short lifespan and mature really fast and produce a lot of offspring, and they don't care for their offspring. But that strategy works for them. So underneath your R selected populations, okay, you might want to highlight what kind of environments do they have? Fluctuating and what? Unpredictable. Good. What kind of factors usually regulate them? Density independent. And they keep their population in lag or exponential phase below the carrying capacity, below K. So this opportunistic pattern, these R strategists, they maximize their rate of natural increase. They're maximizing their R. They maximize their rate of natural increase. They tend to be colonizers. If you're going to pick a letter for their growth curve, what letter are you going to pick? J. J-shaped growth curve. And they tend to be regulated by density independent factors. Now, let's contrast that to these K-selected. Small or large?
Large.
Do you think they care for their offspring?
Yes.
High or low competition? Probably high. They're probably competing for that particular environment. Why? They're going to stay there a long time. Okay? Are they going to invest in their young? Yes. Okay? So K-selected, they usually hover around their carrying capacity, and their competitors, not colonizers. And they're known as equilibrium species because they're trying to keep it right at that carrying capacity. And they're large, long lifespans, slower to mature. And they care for their few offspring. They're investing in them. Yes?
For
Yes.
our selected populations,
Yes.
aren't there also like a lot of competition just because there are a lot in a city?
And not enough competition to limit their numbers, because otherwise that would be a limiting factor, right? If there was competition, it would limit. So at that point, it's like feast or famine.
Okay.
They will have eventually competition. It's like, oh, there's a rotten banana, you know, so then all the fruit flies are like, yay, but eventually you throw your rotten banana away. Oh, okay, and we're dead. Yeah, bummer. Okay, so K-selected populations, environments are relatively stable and predictable. Relatively stable and predictable. Populations near K strategists. Populations near the carrying capacity. They are strong competitors. They tend to be a specialist. What's their letter for their growth curve? S, good, S-shaped growth curve. And then write down their traits. They're up here. And you should be able to figure out F without me. Yes. So smart. All right, so R and K strategists, those tend to be the extremes. Most populations are somewhere between these two strategies. Somewhere between these two strategies. Okay, turn towards your bio buddy. Oldest bio buddy, you are the K strategist. Youngest bio buddy, you are the R strategist. Ping pong back and forth, try to convince each other of your ways. Go ahead.
To get it all the time.
Okay, for my environment, you're more Am I not?
All right. So this is like a reindeer. Okay. Would you think this reindeer is an R strategist or a K strategist? Okay. So this K strategist, their numbers were really low, and so they wanted to increase their numbers. So they thought, well, one of the ways K strategists are their population size is by predators, right? So we think we can increase their population size if you remove the predator, which was a wolf. So they removed the wolves. And sure enough, their population increased. But it's like, I'm telling you, what happened when we sent all those people to Stanford that wouldn't normally get in, right? Was it always survival of the fittest? No. And it ended up, it's not like they leveled off. They ended up growing, look at this, exponential, 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 exponential. And then what ended up happening? They crashed because they overate their resources so much that it ended up crashing, and they ended up being at a lower level than what they originally were because man stepped in and tried to help out. So sometimes these cycles take a long time for them to eventually balance out, and when we step in the middle of it, sometimes we don't see all the ramifications that can happen. So that's kind of forward thinking to our last chapter, but I wanted to point that out to you. And now answer me a question. Answer me 3 questions.
regulate its size. Because they have an and density. Yeah, you gotta
All right, guys. Check with your bio buddy, see if they're struggling.
Yeah, that was
Ready? Okay, start at the first one. Dang it. What did somebody pick? Somebody picked what? Parasitism. Is that a density independent or a density dependent? What would a parasite be? Density dependent. Yeah. Things like weather. Weather doesn't happen because of your population size. That's why it's a density independent factor, but it can regulate your population size. Check with your bio buddy. Were they part of the 24 or part of the 1? Shame or gong? Which of the following is not a feature of an organism with an opportunistic life history pattern? So when you get a question like that, that's saying all of them are opportunistic, right? Except for 1. So then you just go through and go, is this opportunistic? So is having small size opportunistic? Yes. Regulated by density independent factors? Yes. Do you tend to have small number of offspring? No. So that's why you would pick C. Do you tend to mature early? Yes. Offspring are small in size? Yes, because you are small in size. Check with your bio buddy. Did they struggle on that one, or were they okay? Remember, the idea is not to memorize, but to what? Understand. Because that's what you're going to have to do on your AP exam is apply it. Oh, only 17. Let's talk about it. An S-shaped growth curve. Does it occur when there is no environmental resistance? No. Why? The environmental resistance is what's what? Slowing it down into the S shape. Changing it from J to S. That is the environmental resistance. Does it still have an exponential? Yes. Always still has an exponent. Is survivorship curve short-lived? By the way, what survivorship curve is short-lived? What's the number? 3. Okay. Their survivorship curve is not short-lived, right? They have a long lifespan, and what would that be? Number 1. Are you number 1? Yes, you just remember, we're number 1. Okay, we're survivorship curve 1. Does it occur no, that's just lame. Oh, somebody picked it. Sorry, no. Okay, check with your bio buddy. See if they understand that. Shadowlands or sunshine?
sunshine. So much sunshine.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about humans. All right. So post-industrial revolution, huge increase in population. Huge increase in population size. And population size are more recently starting, the growth, the R, is starting to level off a little bit. Okay? But currently, world population per day, about 216,000 newbies. Okay? Which means per year, how many? Yeah, about. Our doubling size now is about every 56 years. Our population is doubling. Think about that. Okay? How old are you going to be in 56 years? In your 70s? Early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, right? So whatever the population is now, imagine it being twice as much in your 70s. Could that possibly be a problem? Yes. Okay, what do people need? Food. What else do they need? Water. Remember I told you, invest in water. Okay? Food, water, you need space, right? Now, could we have technology to support that many? Yeah. I don't think farming is going to happen outdoors. I think farming is going to happen in buildings. Stratified layers in buildings where you control the carbon dioxide, you control the amount of water, You're not going to see things outdoor. Outdoors, I'm susceptible to drought, weather conditions, right? So farms are going to start to be large buildings, and they're going to grow food specifically for the, you know, you can, if you like in, where do good strawberries come from? Central America? Where? Oxnard. Big deal. So you can look at the pH of the soil. You can look at what the weather conditions usually are, the amount of water, the amount of sunshine. You can recreate that in a building, right? Do you see how much less wasteful? Think about all the rain. When the rain comes down on a large farm, it's going everywhere, places where the roots aren't, right? And you're like, oh, if only we could gather and put it where the roots are. That's where I need it for the plants. Okay? Or locusts coming in and eating everything. Not in a building, right? And you could take where you would have an acre, you would need a huge field. If you do it in levels, right? I mean, in this room right here, depending on if it's strawberries, I bet you could get at least 4 or 5 layers, right? Just in one building. So things will change. Technology is going to happen to support, but things might become more expensive. So as things become more expensive, people are going to say, I can't have 5 kids because I can't afford them. I can only have 2 kids, or we're only going to have 1 kid. Now, has that policy been employed before?
China.
Yeah. You said it just like your favorite one. Okay, so.
That was funny.
I thought it was funny.
All right. So, we need to look, okay. Why did I use this graphic, dark-shirted bio buddy? Go ahead.
Because there's 7 babies.
It's a gross, I made a terrible picture. You got it? You know why the babies are on the graves? Okay. For 0 population growth, okay? Now, you look at MDCs and LDCs. There's no judging here. We're not judging people who live in a different, we are definitely in a more developed country. We're not judging people in a less developed country. It's a different culture, okay? Different religious environment, right? Could be than yours, and different living conditions. Obviously, you can tell, here's the more developed country, right? Look, they obviously have multiple rooms. I can see because they have multiple windows. Looks like some grandparents are over there, right? Here, they're probably living in their one room, okay? They have, you know, you think about the amount of space you have for yourself. It is tremendous. You have your own room. Some of you, a lot of you have your own rooms. You don't even clean your own room. You're like, and then when your parent, what happens before the housekeeper comes?
Clean your room.
Clean your room. Because it's not her job to clean up and organize your stuff. It's just to clean, right? I mean, some of you are like, I don't have a housekeeper. We have to clean everything. Good for you. Okay, awesome. Learn a skill. Okay? You're not all going to Stanford. Okay, now. Okay, hear me. You have, sometimes I cannot stand when I hear kids go, oh, I live in Ghetto Park. Okay? You don't? None of you are like, we didn't have water today, I couldn't bathe. I've never heard any of you say that. Okay? Nobody worries about water. If you forget to pack your lunch, somebody will feed you. Right? You'll have a friend who has food. It's not like we don't have food in our house. Okay? Most of you, even if you're going through hard times financially as a family, which some families are, and be sensitive to that, peoples. Some people go through very hard financial times and they come to school every day under that burden. And some of you live with tremendous amount of not worrying. And so we have to always be sensitive to that. But for the most part, you have all of your things that you need in a more developed country. You're not thinking about your day-to-day needs, where in countries, other countries, they are. And when you look at, right here, our more developed countries, look at all those homes. In the United States, in 2004, a new house went up every 20 minutes. This is outside, in Henderson, outside of Vegas. The American lifestyle, characterized by gas-thirsty cars and big houses using lots of electricity, contributes to the energy appetite. Do you know in a lot of families back in the day, you know how many cars you had? One. Now everybody has their own car, or you want to have your own car. Somehow you feel like it's not fair because you don't have a car, okay? Terrible children. All right, London. So London became the world's largest city during the coal-powered industrial revolution, a tipping point for the steep rise of Earth's population. Wealthy countries use many times more resources per capita than poorer nations. But as global incomes rises, increased consumption may stress the population, what we're taking out of the Earth, than the actual number of people on Earth. Here is Spain. Do these people look like they're from Spain?
No.
No. Okay, what's going on here? This becomes a huge concern, okay?
Oh,
Immigration,
it's a
right?
concern. It's a concern.
Oh, boy.
I thought it was a great thing.
Oh, boy.
Now, around the world, this is the part I want you to get. So you have a lot of immigration going to places where you have a better chance of surviving or providing for your family. And around the world, childbearing decisions of young women will determine whether global population stabilizes or not. Look at this. Research shows that the more what? Education a woman has. Do we need to be building schools? Yes. Instead of throwing condoms at people, we need to be throwing books at people, right? The more educated you are, right? The more educated you are, the more likely you will be able to do that. Now, do all women in all countries have a choice on childbearing? No. Okay, different cultures impose different restrictions on women and what they can do and what they can choose. Yes?
Is that directly like a causation, or could it just be that places that have better education also have better like birth control and things like that?
Well, that would be the stem. There could be many. I'm going to give you another graph or another diagram, but that is found to have the biggest influence on weather. So could it be as a result of their better education that they know more about birth control as well? Possibly. But you can't, and different religions, some religions say that you should never use birth control, right? And again, I'm not judging here. They're just saying that you're interfering with God's handiwork by using birth control. So if you have that, and that's what you're culturally raised with, why wouldn't you wouldn't ever consider that, because that would be going against your family, right? That'd be going against what you know. So those are the bigger issues, but education seems to have the greatest influence. Uganda, this one's super sad to me. In Uganda, school children, among them war orphans, pack a morning assembly at a public school in the northern city of Lira. Half of Uganda's 34 million people are under the age of 15. Tell me what that age structure diagram looks like. Right? Big old base. Okay? And all of those pre-reproductives are going to move into reproductive. And then what's going to happen? Even more of a base. And the population size goes up and up and up. Okay? This is in Kenya. I don't know if you can see. There's a single pot here, and then she's scooping stuff out. Here's everybody. So in a Nairobi slum, Mary Wanza, a single mother earning $3 a day. Your latte, if you get one at Starbucks, costs more than $3, doesn't it? Mine does. I think it's like $4.25. Okay. So she's making less than my latte every single day. And she's raising some are hers, others are grandkids and orphans. Wanza, 41, gave birth to the first of 7 children at age 15. Fertility rates remain high in sub-Saharan Africa. Kenya's rate fell from 8 to 5. The global average is what? 2.5. That's not replacement reproduction. Replacement reproduction is if 2 people have 2 children, right? That would be replacement. But it's still increasing. And so I like this graphic about population of the planet. Ways to increase the population, medicine, sanitation, those types of things are going to increase your population size. What's going to decrease it? Disease, abortion, war, accidents, right? All of these things decrease it. How can you level those numbers off? What's the effect on biodiversity? Those are all the things that we would want to consider. Go to go to human population growth. Doubling time, the time it takes for the population size to double. Currently it's around, do you remember what it was? 56. And zero population growth is when equals death rate. Birth rate equals death rate. For LDCs, B, they are still in exponential phase. They are still in their exponential phase, and the majority live in poverty. For MDCs, growth is leveled off. Strategies to reduce the growth rate, strengthen family planning. Use social programs to reduce the desire for large families. Provide education for women. Balance the equation. Hashtag balance the equation. Provides education for women. Reduce child mortality. On C, delay onset of childbearing. Blue, explain what demographic transition is. It's up here, it's on your notes. Go ahead. Who's talking right now? Blue. Slate, compare these age structure diagrams. What's going to happen? Go ahead, compare and contrast. Which one's the MDC on the left or the right? Right, good. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, because it's not like kids.
Okay, so for LDCs, more women are entering the reproductive age. There's pyramid shape, continued growth, unstable age structure diagram. On MDCs, more women are leaving, and column shape and stable age structure. Stable age structure. Blue, explain this graph right here. What is this saying? Summarize the conclusions from this. Go ahead. What's the takeaway?
We have a small population.
What's the takeaway here? Yeah, MDCs are only 22% of the population, but they generate what? 90% of the hazardous waste production. Okay, and then Slate, this is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, so we consume 60% of fossil fuels, and we consume 80% of metals, and 75% of plants. We have a small population, so we're using way more than the LDCs.
All right, so if you go to population growth and environmental impact, the EI is the environmental impact. I gave you A and I gave you B. Slate, you take care of A, and Blue, you take care of B.
Population size, times resource consumption per capita, or equals pollution per unit of resource used.
So MDCs and LDCs are both stressing the planet, right? LDCs are stressing it by what? Population size. MDCs are stressing it by resource depletion and then with the hazards that we generate. So be careful in your judgy McJudge or not of LDCs and population size. So your ecological footprint, that examines the total land and water needed per person. I don't like what I said there. Total land and water needed per person. And then to be considered sustainable, it's calculated that per person you need about 1.7 hectares, and then I just to relate this to acre, 1 hectare contains about 2.47 acres. So a hectare is bigger than an acre, okay? And you're not gonna have to memorize that. I'm just giving you a number because the important part here is in the US we have about 10 hectares per person. So do we have more than enough space? Yeah. Okay, and then we'll talk about some of the impacts of that comes up in our next chapters. Okay, the end. And group shared notes. Let's go, 45. Bear down, bear down.
Jake, let's go.
Wait, Robbie, did you share that? No, I didn't. Oh, okay, yeah.
I never share notes.
If you're not sharing, you're caring. If you're not busy sharing notes right now, I need the other people. Talk about what you've learned in the last chapter. Ping pong back and forth if you're not in charge of getting the notes out.
What color do you guys want to be?
But the page turns.
I brought one, so just tell me if in
What's that we had to learn? What's the public? Last year.
Who needs more time?
Yeah, I.
Raise your hand if you need more time on your group shared notes. Okay. Okay, you good? Okay.
Should I spell your name wrong?
So we're leveling up. Our last chapter was about populations. Now we go up. What's above a population? Population, community. Okay, not it.
No, not it.
Pass or play. Explain what a community is. Go ahead.
A community is a population of the same. I'm gonna do what color should I choose? I'm gonna do pink. This start us off. Actually, I'll do
All right. Before I forget, I didn't have you do this, and I wish I had. I would have you read through the summaries that I'm putting at the end of the notes. Are you using those summaries? Okay, because they take a while for me to type. Okay, so you're using those, right? And you're looking at what you must know, right? Okay. All right. So here on chapter 45, when we talk about communities, you can't just list off. Like, here is the coniferous forest. That's actually a biome, okay? Where it has particular flora and fauna dependent upon climate, right? But you just don't say squirrel, moose, snowshoe hare. You're just listing it because that doesn't tell you the abundance or the density. Remember we talked about the importance of density, right? When we look at the demographics of a population. So when you look at the diversity, you need to include both all the different types of organisms as well as the abundance of each. So on your notes, go down to species diversity, beyond just composition. It includes the relative abundance of each species. Relative abundance of each species. Okay, now, don't look at the notes yet. I want this to make sense in your head. Okay? Island biogeography. Take a look up here, Just let's make it make sense. Because when we look at an island, that's a really good tool to look at biodiversity and the impacts. Because you can apply that then to a park, let's say that we're trying to preserve organisms in a national park. Because that's kind of like an island amongst people, right? Okay, so, oh, I forgot to stop recording. We'll just keep going. When you look at an island, what type of island do you think will have more species? A small island? Don't look at your notes. You don't try to, just logically. What will have more species? A small island or a large island? Okay. Why do you say a large? I agree with you. Why a large island? More space. Okay. Okay. And when you think about who will have more species, do you think an island close to the mainland or far from the mainland will have more species? What do you think?
Close.
How are you going to get organisms on that island?
They fly.
So only flying organisms.
Or swim.
Swimming. So where could you have more species then if you were closer to the mainland? So when you look at island biogeography, those are factors that you would consider. Okay? Take a look at this graph. This is saying islands closer to the mainland have more what? Immigration. Because it's easier to get there. Now look at this rate of immigration. For both the near island and the far island, the rate of immigration is what? Going down. Why is it going down? They're reaching their
Capacity.
yeah, their carrying capacity. There's not enough room for you to come here. The island is full. Okay? No more room. And as the island becomes more and more full, there's going to be greater what? Starts with an E.
Emigration.
No. Oh, okay, yes. Or extinction. Yeah. Yeah. So when you compare both of them, okay, look to me. I know you have a lot on your plate, but I want to keep teaching you in the time that we have together. Does that make sense? Okay? Well, I have another 5 minutes of learning that can take place. All right, so near island, far island. The closer the island, the greater the rate of immigration, but as we get farther away, less and less immigration. Now take a look at this. Read your axes. What is this saying?
The rate of extinction goes up.
Who has more extinction? Yes, and it's also telling you smaller islands have more extinction, but as the number of species increase, the more extinction you have. That's the trend, right? But you're going to have greater extinction in a smaller island. So you can overlap these two graphs to see how you can have the greatest biodiversity. And I would like light-shirted bio buddy explain this right here. You can do it.
Okay, so equilibrium species richness and biodiversity. Far island has a lower equilibrium, and then larger island, or the nearer island has a higher equilibrium.
So if we are looking for the greatest biodiversity, we look where they overlap, right? So they overlap here, 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 and here. Well, this is the one that brings us out farthest on the species biodiversity. So who is involved in this one? Well, it's a what? Large island that is closer, the near island. Larger, near, bigger. So now I want you to think about this. I want to put a national park in. Boom. And I want people to come visit the park because they're going to give me money, right? Because they're like visiting, buying things. Do I put my roads around the outside or through the middle of the park?
Outside.
The middle.
Okay. Listen, he's trying to maximize money, right? But in the long haul, what's going to happen is that park going to last if I have a road down the middle. Why? Because I've now, instead of having one big island, I have two. So what's going to happen? What rate is going to increase? My rate of extinction. Do you see that? So we need to apply, when we're throwing money trying to save, organisms, you need to think, okay, I want to make the biggest island I can, right, that's not interrupted. Now, patchiness is different than fragmentation. Patchiness is saying have all different kinds, have dry, have wet areas, have high, like have levels, canopies. That's patchiness. Like I have create a bunch of little microhabitats. But fragmentation is people go, I don't want to drive around the outside of the park. I want to get where the animals are in the middle. Well, that's why the animals are there, because you're not there, right? And so you put the roads around the outside because you don't want to create these little islands that they have to cross. All right, so I gave you everything about that underneath island biogeography model. Do you see that? And then this leads us, you can do this one too. This one's easy. Habitat versus niche. Dark shirted one, this is all you. Go. So they all live in this habitat, right? They're all living in this habitat. What is his job? Or her job, sorry. What's her job? Look up here. Her job is to what? Kill and hunt. What's his job?
guy.
Yeah, his job is to die. Okay, he's prey. What's this one over here? What's his job probably?
Scavenger.
Scavenger. What's this one's job?
That's not pretty. Into the ground. Feed the prey. Feed?
Feed the prey, right? To be a photosynthesizer. So they're all living in the same habitat, but they all have a different niche. And the thing here is no two species can occupy the same niche indefinitely. There's going to be what if you want the same job? Competition. Okay? And so we'll talk about how do you resolve that within communities next time. Okay? Love you very much. Pack up. We're done. Yay! I love learning. Be educated.